Here we go. Good morning, guys. Good morning. It's Thursday. Clayton's making an appearance here on a Thursday morning. Got JMart with me. Usually we do these late Friday or early Saturday, but today we're going to do it Thursday because there's a lot to talk about. Trying to figure out these playoff rankings, trying to figure out who's going to make it. There's a lot going on. And then also we got I hope Pittsburgh loses tonight. I don't know if I'm going to be able to talk myself into betting on the Browns here on Thursday Night Football, but Pittsburgh does have to go on the road. It's a weird spread, kind of begging you to take Pittsburgh. So I'll get your guys' thoughts there at the end as we try to speak into it. At least I speak into existence. The Steelers lose. So that's tonight. College basketball all day long. I mean, if you love college basketball, this is the best time as school's about to let out. So they have all these random tournaments, early games. So there's, excuse me, a lot going on today. But yeah, let's start here, man. So I went through everything. Talked it out with you guys before we went on here. The only conclusion I have is Oregon's going to make the tournament. Oregon will make the playoffs. There's 12 teams. Oregon's the only undefeated team outside of Indiana, and they'll most likely lose to Ohio State. But work with me on this. Oregon plays Washington, and then they get the Big Ten championship. So they're going to have 2 games left. They're automatically going to be in the Big Ten championship. They can lose both of those games, right? And they'll still be – they won't get the bye, but they'll still make it. Right, J-Mark?
Yeah, I don't really see a world there. Again, it helps being the number one team this late into the year. Everyone just kind of expects them to be there. A Washington loss would be shocking in the first place, but even if that happens, they're not going to hold a one-loss regular season team out, especially at Oregon's caliber.
Yeah. So, but then when you go through the rest of it, this is why college football this weekend and the next 3 weeks is going to be so much fun because no one else is a lock. Let's start with Indiana and Ohio State because they're the closest ones to a lock. Indiana's undefeated. Ohio State has the one loss. Ohio State's a big favorite at home against Indiana this weekend. Start with that game first, Clayton, on how you see it playing out. And then as long as Indiana beats Purdue the following week, it doesn't really matter, even if they lost 41-0, right?
Yeah, I think weirdly enough, Indiana has almost a higher chance of making the playoffs than Ohio State just because Ohio State has more potential for loss. But I think as long as they keep it relatively close, I don't see them winning in any world. I think Ohio State's just a much more talented team. Everyone in the Big Ten besides Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, and Indiana is just not at all playoff caliber. So the fact that Indiana hasn't really played anyone else, they just aren't very convincing yet. But like I said, as long as it's not a super bad loss and they don't somehow lose to Purdue, who's one of the bottom teams in the Big Ten, I don't see that happening. They're pretty much a lock at this point for at least one of the lower seeds.
Do you see it the same way, Jamar, or is Indiana actually better than we think?
I don't really think you check Indiana's schedule and their outcomes. They're winning games well. They're just not really playing anyone that is that notable. Ohio State will probably be a shock, especially in terms of talent. And yeah, I can see it maybe being a close game, but I don't think Ohio State blows this one. And yeah.
What about, okay, so Ohio State beats Indiana, then they get Michigan. Do they still have to beat Michigan and then they can lose in the Big Ten championship? Or is there a world where they beat Indiana, lose to Michigan? That's where we get into, does it cost you to play in that Big Ten championship? Just write me the scenario where Ohio State loses out. Do they still sneak in there?
No, I think, look, it doesn't make sense. It shouldn't work this way. But if they end up as a 3-loss team, even if that came in the Big Ten championship, it'll be held against them, and it shouldn't. That isn't how it should work. They're playing an extra game. It should only count towards them. But unfortunately, we've seen how the CFP committee works. They really hold losses against teams. And they'll continue to do that right here, I think.
They're still responsible. That to me, the playoff committee is responsible for what the hell happened in Florida State this year. Like, they still haven't recovered. They lose by 1,000 to Georgia, and they're still feeling sorry for themselves, and they're screwed. Penn State, everyone said before the season, Penn State's going to be in this perfect position because they get this soft schedule, and the 12-team tournament is going to put them in. And now I'm staring at them facing, it's like a playoff game. They're at Minnesota this week. Like, this is why college football is going to be cool here in the last stretch. At Minnesota is essentially a playoff game, right? Because they're going to get Maryland the following week. But if they lose to Minnesota and they beat Maryland, they're not going to be in the Big Ten championship. And they're not going to have any big wins on their resume. Clayton, thoughts on Penn State and where they're going to end up?
Yeah, like Jack was saying, I think the committee kind of takes losses more seriously than strength of schedule, unfortunately. So even if they were to lose to Minnesota, I think they would still be able to sneak in just because they're a 2-loss team and what I think the playoff committee sees as the second strongest conference. I think they would sneak in as one of the lower seeds.
They just have to split between Minnesota or Maryland, and you think they're going to get in?
I think so, yeah. I just think because they'll be a 2-loss team, there's going to be a lot of 3-loss SEC teams most likely that are going to be on the cusp of getting in. I think they would put Penn State over that. And like Jack was saying, a lot of these 1-2-loss teams, they don't want to play in their conference championships because it could cost them a spot in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think I know where the bias is with you two, but I think the 2-loss Big Ten teams aren't going to be favored against even a 4-loss SEC team in a lot of situations. So, all right, why don't we switch gears a little bit, J-Mark, go through a couple of these other teams, because another team that I feel like is sitting pretty is the Fighting Irish, right? Notre Dame, they lose to Texas A&M. They beat Texas A&M, and then they lost to Northern Illinois, right? Yeah. So they get a really bad loss. Their last 2 games are very favorable. So as long as they win the last 2, they're going to get in. Do you see them winning, starting with this week? Is this the game of the week? Army at Notre Dame? Notre Dame beat the crap out of Navy. I know they're not the same, but how's Army going to match up here against Notre Dame? And then they get USC. So I guess I'm asking you 7 questions in one here. Let me start with this. Does Notre Dame have to win both of these games, or can they just win 1 out of 2 and sneak in, J-Mark?
I think this is another situation. They only need 1 out of 2 because, again, the way that the CFP committee quantifies losses over strength of schedule, a 2-loss Notre Dame team isn't better than I'd say a 3-loss Tennessee or a 3-loss Ole Miss, but they'll be seen as better because A, it's Notre Dame, and then B, the loss difference. I think that they can handle Army pretty well. It might not be exactly the same as the Navy game where they stomped them, but they've shown that they're inept defending against the triple option. I don't expect to see some drastic change just because of a personnel shift for Army.
Yeah, Clayton, that seems to be, I pretty much agree with that. Do you see anything different there with the Notre Dame program?
Yeah, I think Notre Dame kind of has that one in the bag. Army hasn't had any super convincing wins, especially later into the season. A lot of their bigger wins were more towards the beginning. So despite Notre Dame's weird performance against NIU, they've looked really strong in pretty much all their other games. So I expect them to win this one.
Yeah, and USC is not that great.
Yeah.
That would be a game, though, if Notre Dame – that's like a game you don't want to lose at the end of the season while everybody's watching if they look bad against USC. But, yeah, because it's Notre Dame and because we need to fill the seats and get as many kids to these games as possible, Notre Dame, I would say, is pretty much a lock. So the way this all works is there's one team that gets in from the Mountain West, the Sun Belt, the American, the conference, these lesser conferences that aren't the ACC, Big Ten, Big 12, and SEC. We get one guaranteed team. Doesn't mean we can't have 2, 3, or 4, but we have one guaranteed team. Boise State has the inside track. They have the most likable player in college football, the running back, Genty. If you haven't read it, there's a great article, I believe it was on ESPN, where he talks about how he turned down the NIL money and how everybody offered him a ton of money this year and he turned it down. He's going to be fantastic. Boise State's really good, but they get Wyoming, which is probably a cakewalk. Then they get Oregon State, and then they get the conference championship. How is this going to work out? Does Boise State, JMart, do they have to win the conference championship in order to get that at-large bid, right? Because if they don't, someone else is going to get it. Is that how that works?
I think so. It's weird because if you look at the rankings, it's clear that the second best Group of 5 team left is Army. And we all can feel pretty comfortable about Army losing this game. Then it drops to 2-loss Tulane and then 2-loss UNLV. So for Boise State, if they win out in the regular season and UNLV loses a game at any point during the rest of the season, they should still be favored even if they lose the conference championship game if we're going off this whole loss thing. Because they'd only have 2. UNLV would have had 3 in the regular season. But again, then you get into the head-to-head thing where it's like UNLV would have beaten Boise State.
But then you up the
championship.
And not only that, but then you have to, in order to get that automatic bid, you have to be the conference championship winner of that conference. So if Boise State doesn't win that conference, they're just, then what'd you say, Tulane, Army, all of a sudden that conference championship game, it'll be the biggest game in the whole season.
Exactly. And I think Boise State should win out. I think they can beat Wyoming and Oregon State. UNLV will be kind of interesting. It's been interesting watching how teams defend Boise State because a lot of them have sold out, stop the run. and force them to pass. And Boise State's good enough at passing that strategy has been really bad. It hasn't worked. All it's done is made Junty's stats look a little worse against you, but it's not stopped them from beating you. I think they're going to need to it's almost like a Shaq concept where you kind of got to let Jonty get kind of what he wants and like not fully sell out on him to stop the big plays over the top in order to like actually like make the offense just a little less explosive. Because
will he be a first? How does he compare to Bijan Robinson when he came out? Because him and Barkley are the first two that jump out over the past 5 to 10 years. Where's Genty rank amongst them, you think?
So the issue is that people that draft in the NFL don't really like that traditional pound the rock 20, 25 times a game kind of guy. Derrick Henry fell into the late first. Nick Chubb was a second round pick. Like these guys fall pretty far past where they should over guys that can catch passes better. I see him being a mid first round, similar to where Henry was, just because of how dominant he's been in college, but he won't get probably that top 10 love just because they don't see him with pass catching ability. But when you look deeper into it, he was a wide receiver in high school. Like he can catch passes. He's just not asked to. I think he's a guy that if you get him like 14 or 15 in the NFL draft, you're getting like a ridiculous steal right there.
Clay, what are your thoughts here on, do you like it? I know you're down there in the big university at South Carolina, and your South Carolina team is going to be right there at the edge competing with a Tulane or an Army or even a Boise State. What's your take on it? Do you like that a smaller school automatically gets in, or do you wish it was different?
I mean, I do like it from the small school perspective. I think it's good to have their representation in there. But now that my team is on the cusp of making the playoffs, I kind of hate it, especially the conference champion rule. Like we were saying, it kind of seems like Boise State has to win their conference championship, even if they're obviously the best Group of 5 team.
Yeah. The way it's all, you have to win, just so everyone understands, like the rule is if you don't win that conference championship, you're not eligible for the automatic bid. So there's not really a world, I guess there is, where Boise State wins the next 2 games, they destroy their opponents, then they lose a double overtime heartbreaker in the conference championship, and then they maybe are there the 11 seed, but doubtful because they don't have a big win on their regular season resume. So, all right, well, we kind of eased our way into what I think is the more dramatic aspects here as we come down the stretch. Let's start in the ACC. Miami, they're trying to hold on. SMU now, it's going to be SMU versus Miami here in the ACC championship. Does Clemson, do they get left out then? Or does Clemson benefit from the loser? Like, how does that play out? Whoever loses the ACC championship, do they have an edge on Clemson? I know we've been talking about this for the past few minutes, but is that really how it's going to play out? Like the third team in the ACC goes above the second team in the ACC because the second team loses in the championship? How do you see it playing out, JMart?
I mean, it's really, we don't know is the answer. Is like, I think if it was Clemson versus SMU in that spot, I think they'll give it to Clemson just because, again, it's name recognition. It's
Miami beats SMU in the ACC championship, and you think Clemson gets in over SMU?
They might try and do that. There's no real reason they should, but like they would be fighting to get that Clemson fan base in there. And Clemson's played a good season still, but it should be those 2 teams in the ACC championship game just make it. They shouldn't get penalized for losing to one another when they had a 1-loss regular season. But you could see them do that. They've done it before. They're not. They haven't figured out how to use championship games to actually like recognize where teams should be and stuff. Yeah, we're on like year 10 now, and they still don't know what to do with them. They've expanded to 12, and they still don't know what to do with them. It's becoming a little bit of an issue. Like
it is. It reminds me of like the discourse sometimes about LeBron, and I'm not a big LeBron guy, but they'll like bash him for how many championships he hasn't, or his like record in the finals, and it's like, yeah, you do get credit though for getting to the finals. Like that is a huge part of the equation. So yeah, the ACC to me is the most, man, I can't wait to see how they're going to figure that out, because one team's going to win, and then the third team's going to be sitting there and be like, well, our resume looks a little bit better than the second team. And the second team's like, no, it doesn't. And anyway, we'll figure it out after that. So the Big 12 is, I mean, are any of these teams any good? Like, if they all play Georgia tomorrow, aren't they all like 14-point underdogs? We got BYU, Colorado, Arizona State, and Iowa State. And don't tell Kansas State. They're still kind of lurking around trying to hope for some magic. But one of those teams is going to win the Big 12. My question for you is, Clayton, which one is going to win? And can they get 2 teams? Like, is there a pathway for the Big 12 to get 2 teams at this point?
I don't think so, and I really hope not, just because the Big 12 does not seem at all at the same level as some of the other strong conferences this year. I honestly see Colorado winning that conference. BYU looked really weak against Kansas, and they've just had a lot of really close, just not trustworthy performances. So I expect Colorado to win it. I do think if Boise State wins out and wins their conference, Boise State will actually take the 4 seed. And then the Big 12 would be one of the lower seeds. But
they're not going to let Colorado have the home game where Deion can have his rap party and all his friends? Wait, Clay, JMart. So, okay, that's a good point. I didn't even think of that part. First, pick up on that. Do you agree with Clayton on Boise State wins out and one of these Big 12 team wins out and Boise State still gets it? And then do you have Colorado winning the Big 12 championship also?
It's ridiculous, but he's right. Like, Boise State would get the bye. They would be the 4th best conference champion if they went out. There's not much Colorado can do to change that at this point, unless Boise State really struggled against Wyoming and then really struggled against Oregon State, and then Colorado came out dominant. But I've thought for a while now that it's kind of Colorado's to win. I loved BYU's story, but it was clear that, being undefeated that long, some pressure got to them. Like, they started feeling a little more nervous out there. It's natural. Like, they were in a really good spot. The Big 12 is still competitive, which is what's scary, is like none of these teams are like top 15 really or top 12, but they're all like 20 to 30. Like, they're all right in that little range. So if Colorado comes out, they screw up somewhere, they can lose it, and it becomes your guess as good as
mine. So whoever wins the Big 12 championship gets in, and then nobody else is getting it.
If there was a way for like really none of them to make it, if Colorado were to drop a game, that probably would be the most fair, but they have to have a team, I guess. Yeah.
That's funny. All right. So we'll finish off with your SEC because that's obviously the most confusing. No one knows what's going to happen. You guys probably both want to have 7 teams in the SEC. Let's start at the bottom and work our way up. I've eliminated LSU, right? Like, they can't make it no matter what. Great. Missouri and South Carolina. Is there a pathway? Clayton, pathway for South Carolina. What's it look like?
So much stuff would have to go wrong in order for South Carolina to make it. Being a South Carolina fan, following all these pages on Instagram, I've seen some scenarios, but it's crazy stuff. Like 5 of like the top 12 having to lose within the next couple weeks. I think you would need Texas to win the SEC. You would need Georgia to drop one, Ole Miss to drop one, Tennessee to hopefully drop one as well. Just kind of hope that there are enough 9-3 SEC teams to where South Carolina would be able to sneak in over one of the others. And that's not to mention South Carolina still has to win out, beat Clemson. That's going to be a tough game on the road.
That one, though,
we got to get through that one first.
Yeah, I was going to say that's their best chance, is winning that game will give them a step above some of these other 3-loss teams, especially if they lose in the final week. All right, so JMart, I'll put you on the spot. We have 6 SEC teams then. If we don't include South Carolina and Missouri and say that they're really long shots, feels like we have 6 teams that have relatively equal chance to make it. Like, they're all in control of their own destiny. Or am I missing something? We got Texas A&M. They're going to play each other. We got Georgia, who, as long as they beat Georgia Tech, they should be fine. Alabama, Ole Miss, and Tennessee. Do they control their own destinies? Go ahead. Where are we at with the SEC?
The funny part is they all kind of control their own destinies because they all kind of beat each other. So, like, it's made this like really weird dilemma where, like, if you leave one of them out, you're really pissing them off because they would have beaten one of the other teams that was in there. I think, it's like everyone's kind of beating each other in this little clump, and they're all really like their resumes outside of strength of schedule are all pretty equal. So if they all went out, they all kind of got to make it. A&M's the one where I think they might try and find a way to keep A. If there's a team that were to not make it, I wouldn't.
Even if they beat Texas? If they beat Texas?
If they beat Texas, they can do whatever they want for really the rest of the season. Like, they'll be.
Because they got the 2 losses, so they get to play. That's why I was saying control their own destiny, because Texas plays Texas A&M the following week. Mm-hmm. The winner of that seems like they should have their spot. How many teams do you think we end up playing? There's 12 playoff teams. Let me do basic math on top of my head. I guess we could technically have 7 SEC teams. It's not going to happen. Do we get 5? Do we get 4? How many do you think we end up with? Blake, what do you think?
I think we end up with 5. If we're going off the best teams in the nation, I think we should have about 7. But just given the conference champion buy-ins and the fact that there's going to be a couple other Big Ten teams that make it, I think we'll see Texas, Bama, Ole Miss, Georgia, and Tennessee get in. That is if Texas beats Texas A&M. If Texas A&M wins that game, completely screws things up. So,
yeah, I mean, what do you think, JMart? How do you think it's going to play out? How many teams from the SEC?
It's probably like Clayton said, 5. Again, if A&M wins, all I'm gonna say, Texas should not want to lose to Texas A&M because it makes it really rough for them. They become a 2-loss team in that same clump, and they lost to Georgia, but then they beat Bama, so it becomes really complicated there. Like it's just a really weird situation.
We're gonna have to look. As someone's already floated this out, I'm sure it's gonna happen eventually, but it's gonna have to turn into the AFC NFC because we can't sit here and guess if Clemson's better than Penn State. That's not fun. That's not the way the world is supposed to be. Not like in sports. Like you want to debate about theories of stuff, economic theory, science, like go for it. But like football, like nobody wants to do that. Like nobody wants to sit here and have a conversation for 3 hours about who's better than who. We want to watch them play, and college football is going to have to change that. There just won't be an NCAA at some point governing the football aspect. But this is really complicated, and this has been going on for a while, and this is the best they came up with. And at least we have something to talk about. So we can debate on SMU versus Penn State or Indiana versus Arizona State, but no one really knows, and I don't think that's fun. So I'm assuming in the next few years they'll iron this out. But for now, this is what we got. We got a bunch of football to watch. Like my main takeaway from this 20 minutes is like, man, Penn State, Minnesota seems like a great game to watch. And it's like, that's why I think this weekend will be a ton of fun. So because we're recording on Thursday, you guys will have all your picks out. Saturday we'll have props and all that stuff. Not too many. Notre Dame, whatchamacallit, Army is like the best ranked game. Is there a game this weekend in particular, JMart, that you're really looking forward to, or something that's catching your eye?
I mean, I'll have to watch Indiana, Ohio State. I hate that it's at noon. I hate that they do that. But whatever. It's their time slot. I'll let them have it. Outside of that, you're right. I think Minnesota, Penn State can be super fun. And then, Colorado, Kansas is probably my main favorite one just because Jalen Daniels and Shedeur Sanders are 2 of the more fun quarterbacks to watch play. And then, Colorado is just always a blast to watch. Like, they just do crazy stuff.
Clayton, can we take Kansas this week? Is this the week finally? Because I'm always waiting for Colorado to be like the road favorite. Like, that's where I'm like, that's where I got them. Overconfident, on the road. Help me out. Can I pull the trigger here on Kansas this weekend?
It's a risky call, but I think Kansas is one of the best, like 3-6. I'm not sure if they're 3-6 or 4-6, but one of the best 4-6 teams in history. Pretty much all of their losses have been by 1 score. They've had super close games, super unlucky finishes. So you could see it. I don't expect it, but I think it'll be closer than most average fans might expect.
Yeah, Colorado has to win these games. Where be careful about the spreads this week. Because now these really good teams, like if Penn State can run it up on Minnesota, if Colorado can run it up on Kansas, if Notre Dame can run it up, they will because it's a game now. It's a game. Like Florida State literally didn't make it last year because their backup quarterback didn't look great. And the coach was like, I just want to win the ACC championship. I know I had to score 30. It's really stupid. I should have made money on that. It was like watching. You could bet on who was going to make the playoffs. It's like, Alabama's going to make it, but I wouldn't bet on it because, like, out of principle, I thought Florida State should make it. There you go. Always bet not in principle. That's not going to help you. So, all right. Well, cool. Appreciate you guys. Can we take the Clowns tonight? JMart, help me out. It's Cleveland beat. It's a trap game.
For any other team in the NFL, it's a trap game, but the Steelers are so well conditioned. Like Tomlin knows how to win games. He's going to come out. He's going to win a game he should win. I will say it'll probably be disgusting. It'll not be a fun game to watch, but it'll probably be one of those typical Steelers 21-10 wins. That's where I see it at.
I know he's right, but I don't know. You got anything for me, Clayton? Jameis Winston, Thursday night special, like a little pregame speech or something?
I was going to say the Browns have looked a little better since Winston took over, but I think it's just one of those games that Pittsburgh finds a way to squeeze out. That's what they've been doing. I think that's what they continue to do. They've got a strong defense. So I expect Pittsburgh to win. But like Jack said, it'll be a typical low-scoring, close Steelers fashion game.
I want to, if Cleveland had a conservative quarterback, like if you just gave me Sam Darnold tonight, maybe just like, and I knew they were going to run the ball, I would just assume, because Russell Wilson, I thought there was a crack last week. I mean, that was a really bad interception. Like, you can't do that. They're about to be up 8 points. And he throws the pick. And their offense is not dynamic. And Cleveland is good at stopping the run. That's why the line is the way it is. But then Jameis Winston has to play a clean game. And I just see that stupid linebackers. All those linebackers, they all look the same. They all look like me. They all come around the edge, and they knock the ball out of there. I can't stand it. The guy took the ball from Justice Hill on a 40-yard play last. Like, I don't – anyway. All right. Well, sorry I even brought it up. Go Browns. We'll have bets out later today, and then we'll have our bets out on Saturday with you guys. Appreciate you guys. And, have a great day, everybody. See you guys in the morning. See you guys.
All right, see you.
See you guys.